First of all, I want to say that I was thrilled to be able to tell this story. I grew up being an enormous fan of Allegra Kent, and I found the book to be very dear and very sweet. I grew up in a small town in West Virginia, and from my very first dance class for many years of my life, I was the only boy in class. And so from that first day, I was aware of my otherness, much like Sophie. No one else moved like me, no one else looked like me, and I found that to be very challenging for the early years of my training, and it took quite some time before I started to travel to take ballet class or modern class and find places where there were other boys, and so it took some time for me to discover that sense of community that I think is one of the really significant parts of this piece for Sophie. Is she is eventually welcomed in and finds a home. Dancing made me very different than the other boys and girls that I went to school with. There was some teasing associated with that, so that sort of underscored that sense of otherness. So for me, there are a lot of connective moments with Sophie's story. First was developing a movement vocabulary specific to Sophie, and that sort of happened in three parts. How Emily, the puppeteer, moves, how the puppet moves in its construction, and how the two of them move together to create the character and color of Sophie. So that was our first challenge. Our second challenge was finding the connective threads and the intersections between how Sophie moves and the movement vocabulary of ballet and the technique of ballet. So I think that was an interesting aspect of that. But I think the biggest challenge and most interesting challenge for me was taking those words from the page, this very specific story, and turning that into a dance piece. I was attempting to be very careful to honor the color and the texture of the words on the page and find a nice balance with the choreography, the movement, the gestures, the shapes, and the emotional moments that we could sort of tease out of that to tell the most concise story we could from this book, and a story that was tailored to a very young audience. I think certainly Allegra Kent was an inspiration for me. I thought much about her and her career as we made this piece, and that these words were coming from her. The illustrations of the book, I think, served as a really good template for some of the movement images that we wanted to have and some of the pictures that we wanted to make on stage. So that was a great support to have that to look at and refer to. And I think my own experience and the experience of the dancers, our history, of course, being in studios and dance as our passion, as the thing that I think has called each of us throughout our lives. Having that sort of shared history helped us to create a piece that made a great deal of sense for us. So this was the first time, though I've worked with kids for many, many years, this was the first time really that I'd made a piece, a movement piece, specifically for a young audience, in this case a very young audience. And so I don't think I was quite prepared for their reaction to the show. I think that is hands down, though I enjoyed working with this creative team and this team of dancers, that was hands down my favorite part of this, and my most significant memory of how invested they were in this story, how excited they were by the story, the laughter, the questions that they were incapable of holding back as the piece unfolded. Kids let it all out, whether it's excitement or confusion as to a particular moment in the story that we're telling. So I think it was that, and I look forward to that again, seeing and hearing that for this second run of this piece. And I also love the fact that so many of them came dressed in costume, ready to go for Sophie's big ballet.